Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Friday to all of you guys, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show with yours truly, Jake the Snake Silva here. We are live on all platforms known to man, live in Denver, Colorado on Roku, iHeartRadio, and all social media platforms known to man for you to like, subscribe, and follow, and hit the bell button. Do not miss out on future and past shows because we are cooking. We are on fire. What a great week that we have had. Vacation mode. Officially a little over, had some family up in town this week, and so I cannot wait for what this up-and-coming week is going to be like, but we made it to a Friday. We got a lot out. Shout out to the 305 Sports babe, Ashley, yesterday, providing us some clarity with the Miami Dolphins. But we got a lot to talk about here tonight. So the thing I want to discuss, because right now everybody in the NFL right now, all football fans in general, we are speculating the NFC East. I know it's a lot to talk about because what's going to happen with the Cowboys, the Giants right now, we are kind of seeing some clarity in this front office with John Mara and also with Joe Shane. The whole Saquon Barkley deal and all the rest of the moves that they also provided. And then is Washington going to be pretty damn good? I think they will be. I think this is a team that's got some serious grit, change of coaches, change of coordinators. And then at the same time, we got the Philadelphia Eagles with a mulligan of new coordinators. So the thing I want to discuss and I want to explain about the NFC East, because this is going to be an interesting division moving into this up-and-coming season. So we know training camp is coming up here, and by the time we start preseason, you're going to see a lot of answers, a lot of questions, that are going to be answered. My thing with the NFC East, because the Eagles, this is a mulligan year for them. Nick Sirianni has to get this right with both Kellen Moore and with Vic Fangio. Plus, they also acquired Saquon Barkley. They drafted Quentin Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. So, and then they signed another safety and another corner. They bring back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I don't think he'll be a massive impact for them, but it provides plenty of depth because Darius Slay needed help and James Bradbury was absolutely cooked, so they let that go. But, this is a mulligan year for them. The defense has to get better because after what we saw in the second half of the season last year, where they only had won one game and they were on a complete disaster. So the Eagles we know are on everybody's radar. And the Cowboys, though, this year, because is Dak going to get paid? If not, who's going to pay him? So the question with the Cowboys is of course, are you paying CeeDee Lamb, which is my gut feeling they should, and then Micah Parsons, you're going to end up paying him because he's one of your best pass rushers. And in the same time, the secondary with Deron Bland, Trayvon Diggs, and a couple other really good pieces I like, is that defense going to be the same defense we saw last year? Now, what happened in the first round exit with the Cowboys, defensive coordinator clearly was outcoached by the offense and with Matt LaFleur. So they could not figure out anything. And at the same time, Micah Parsons was played into a position that is not his strong suit. He's a hybrid, hyper-athletic athlete. Okay? That's what he is as a pass rusher. So if you do not play him in the pass rush, and at the very least get your secondary to play some serious shutdown in the aerial coverage, then you're going to have no chances at all of making a deep run. So the Cowboys now have a new DC in Mike Zimmer, and I do think that the Cowboys could pick up where they left off. But if CeeDee Lamb gets hurt, like I said, I think that is an injury away from this thing completely collapsing because you do not have a trustworthy and capable number 2 option at wide receiver. The only thing that you have is you have tight ends. You got Zeke. You got at least, a couple pieces. And then how's that even going to work out? And then at the same time, if Dak don't get the contract in Dallas, then Dak's not going to stay there. Dak's going to go somewhere where he is going to get paid because they've ran 12-5 seasons now in the last 2 years, and Dak has been very productive and very efficient, putting up MVP numbers. Now, we know we're critical of Dak because he's unbelievable against sub-500 teams, but when he plays teams that are above 500, his record is like subpar, and he's not exactly like a Marino type player at the end of the day, where he's throwing passing touchdowns. He's throwing for almost over 400 yards a game. We're not seeing that against 500 teams or more. So then you've got the Washington Commanders with a new identity with Dan Quinn, Jaden Daniels, your number 2 overall pick at quarterback, and you've also got him some really nice pieces and some weapons. So the Commanders could be a very interesting team. And my feeling is when it comes to the NFC, and me and Chase, we're going to discuss this the next time we have Chase up, our co-host, up onto the show. But we're going to do our call, hold, fold on the NFC because we've already done it with the AFC. And I feel like the Commanders are going to double their wins than what they got last year. I think this is a team that could surprise a lot of people, can turn a lot of heads. And I think they are kind of in a win now scenario and situation. Why not? The thing I think about with the Giants is, after what I'm seeing with Hard Knocks, and Hard Knocks is definitely exposing a lot of stuff. You're seeing before your very eyes how this business is rolling, and you could just kind of see the identity. Now, we know they've got a great pass rush. There's no denying that. And I think to a certain degree and to a certain extent from here, like the Giants, hopefully they are very efficient in offense after losing Saquon Barkley. Now, Daniel Jones is coming off of an injury. We do know that they got a playmaker now in Malik Neighbors out of the draft. But the Giants do have a bunch of those things that they have to address. The offensive line was not as great. Evan Neal was not exactly the pick that the Giants really were hoping that he would turn into. So that is kind of hard. But if you can understand like how all this works, is that you have to be collective on all sides. So it's not only just having a hefty pass rush for the Giants that will make it work, but at the same time, you got to have a very viable offense. You don't have that, you're going to get walked on, especially in your division. The NFC East is really something interesting because we haven't had a back-to-back division winner in this division in particular. We just haven't had it. And maybe because each and every single one of these players on all four of these teams in this division, they have something to prove. They got something to give. It's different. Now, the thing I think about with the NFC East is that changes in coaches, changes in coordinators, and who do I really trust that can get me over the top? Like, is it the Cowboys again, which is really hard to repeat? Could it be the Eagles, who got brand new pieces and brand new coordinators? Could it be the Washington Commanders, who got a new coach, a new regime? They've also added a grit attitude and really good locker room guys, especially Bobby Wagner. Or, how is Brian Daboll and the Giants really going to answer back? So there's a ton of question marks on the NFC East. I don't think I've ever really have seen this with any other division because I know what I'm going to get with the AFC West with the Chiefs. Now, the Chargers will be a much more improved team because they have a very capable coach in Jim Harbaugh. Now, I think the Raiders also have gotten themselves a great, gritty coach because the fact that he improved this defense where they were giving up 17 points to an opposing offense. That is it. They have not given up any more than that, and players were invested in it. The AFC South, I would say, is very much improved, vastly improved, but there are a lot of things that you could look at in any other division that you could say, yeah, this is truly a guarantee. But the NFC East, it's an interesting division. There's a lot on the table, a lot on the line. There's coaching jobs right now that are sizzling because Sirianni has to make it work with this new coordinating group. You've also got Mike McCarthy that you're hoping the Cowboys, they make it into the postseason and they win out of the first round. They win it and they move on. That's the hope. The Giants, though, if things do not end up panning well, it's not going to be on Brian Daboll. It's going to be on that front office and that franchise as a whole. So there's a lot of question marks here. But I'm all for it. I think the NFC East, it's really, really something else. I think, honestly, I think this is going to be at a point where it's going to be tooth and nail. They're going to go, they're literally going to be at each other's necks throughout this whole season. So the NFC East is, in fact, a division I'd pay attention to. Really, really interesting stuff. So the question now remains, and this is now kind of going to the NFC North and more surrounding Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. You do realize that this Packers team was very young last season, where you had a lot of new young wide receivers. You're also improving the offensive line defensively. I have some thoughts up on that, but I do think changing coordinators after what Joe Barry basically did last season, I think the Packers will be in good hands. But I do believe, though, that they are going to be a run-hefty team now, adding Josh Jacobs in the mix and still having A.J. Dillon. So this is going to be a dual running back set that is prepared for anything. They're prepared for any physical game that they're going to get themselves into. Maybe like a Detroit, maybe like a San Francisco, maybe like potentially a Rams, that's a possibility. And there's other physical teams that I know. I mean, Philadelphia, they're pretty physical up on that D-line. So anything is possible. So the Green Bay Packers, they know that the question mark is, are you going to pay Jordan Love? And how much are you willing to pay him? My thought with Jordan Love is I thought he had a very impressive season last year. Now, I'm not going to put him above the pedestal above everybody else that you know as far as top 10 quarterbacks. I'm not going to do that yet. I think he had a very, very good season. I think he's primed for a much bigger jump. And I think this is the point. This is probably the moment that Jordan Love does get paid. If he has a more efficient offensive year than what we got last year, then you pay Jordan Love. You pay him. Because you already saw the contracts that you got with Jared Goff getting $53 million a year with Detroit. You got Trevor Lawrence getting paid $55 in Jacksonville. The price right now is in the $50 million range. Do you pay Jordan Love that? My guess is, and my gut feeling, if he has a much bigger productive year than what we got last year, in like the first 5-6 weeks, you pay him. No questions asked. You pay him. And Green Bay, we know, is not really a big-time free agent hefty market, but they landed Josh Jacobs. They landed at least a couple players, and they did let go of some. So Green Bay still holds themselves to a very high standard, but they're not as noisy. They know what is on the table with the NFC as a whole, and they know what's on the table in their division in the North. Because Caleb Williams now is in the league, and you got him in Chicago. You've got Detroit with a magical season they had last year. They're coming into this year now. Targets are on their backs, and can they improve this year from what we saw last year? And then you've got the Vikings, who they're keeping a lot of their offensive pieces because they're not paying their quarterback anything. They've got Sam Darnold right now as the bridge quarterback, but they're not paying J.J. McCarthy right now. They at least lock in their offensive pieces. They at least try to get some more defensive help, and I think they have addressed it with Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel and a couple others, but hopefully they can address the secondary. But I do think Minnesota is in good shape where they can get over the top maybe in the next couple of years. But this thing with the Packers, I'm not opposed to paying Jordan Love. But I mean, you got to pay him. But my whole hope is that he comes off a highly productive year this year than what we saw last year. Because the first half, I thought, yeah, Jordan Love, now we can kind of see what people were talking about. But now, after just seeing it in the second half of the season, I'm kind of going, whoa, Jordan Love, this kid's something else. Why didn't we see this? But the Packers are very smart about that. They're not as noisy. They're not going to, ramble on and taunt and, kind of babble about what they got at quarterback. They're very smarter than that. So, and again, they were dealing with this whole Aaron Rodgers thing. And then once he's out of the building, the Packers are still the Packers. Smart, well-ran organization. And at the same time, didn't seem like it hurt. It did not seem like it hurt them for the most part at all. Yeah, they missed the playoffs last year, but that's because Detroit was on a mission, and at the same time, Aaron Rodgers was doing Aaron Rodgers things. So it was not really their season. So they came back, they rebounded, and they got into the playoffs with the youngest roster in all the NFL. Now they're going into their second and the third seasons. Now the question is, do we see a much bigger, impactful year on offense? I mean, questions left to be answered. But we will see that come this upcoming season. But I'm excited for it. Good stuff. Appreciate everybody for joining on as well. Again, I do think there are some concerns that are healthy concerns. I get it. Now, I just think it's not as easy as people kind of make it out to be. And sometimes, my thought is I think the NFC North is going to be very, very competitive, but I do feel like Detroit has a very good chance to repeat as division winners, but Green Bay is knocking on the door. Chicago is going to be well improved, because when I looked at that schedule for Chicago this year, it's very favorable. They could definitely end up winning potentially 9-10 games, depending on how, because I think Shane Waldron, what we saw in Seattle, was a much better offense. So I think the sky's the limit. But the NFC East, it's actually kind of true. I had some sources basically tell me, like, hey, this is not as guaranteeable of a division as you think it is with the NFC East, because we've had different division winners every year. So that's very possible, and that's very true. So shout out to everybody, of course, on our TikTok lives. We are live up on TikTok right now. Appreciate all of our fans and all of our supporters up out here on the show. Coming up next, so we got a better wrap on Bronny James in the next couple games. So I do think that usually the first game, it's highly emotional, and it is pretty. The anxiety levels are through the roof, but I do feel like that this is a potentiality. Do I think Bronny James could be Rookie of the Year this upcoming year? People think that he could be. I don't see it, to be honest, because I don't think the offensive side has fully grasped and developed itself yet. But he is a very good defensive player. But I'll explain a little bit more about that coming up. And College Football 25, people have been telling me, man, they're like, Jake, you got to get this. You got to get this game. You seriously got to get this game. There is nothing there is no other game out there that feels so realistic. And you understand what a college coach and a recruiting class literally goes through. Like, these recruiters and everybody, there's something to be said about this. I'll explain more about that as well, and why I think I recommend definitely getting it. I'm working on maybe potentially getting the game myself, because I would love to be in the seats of the coaches, the recruiting staff, and kind of see how the atmosphere in the college universe kind of looks like. So I'm excited about it. All right, folks. Well, like I said, BetUS has been cooking up. Second half of baseball is back, and it's back in big fashion. So All-Star game is now officially over. We go into the hefty mark of the season. This is where things really start to get interesting in Major League Baseball, but there are great bet lines for you to choose from to get on the edge of your game and win some big bucks. BetUS has you covered on all of that. Betting expertise as well, strategies, analysis to keep you on the edge of the game, and also some great casino play as well for all of those who are looking for great casino entertainment and so much more. So go online to betus.com, $25, $50 into your deposit, or more. You'll get 200% in bonuses with 30 risk-free bets on top of it. That's single, parlay leg bets, prop bets, anywhere to choose from. Check it out for yourself. Gambling problem? Call the number in your state to get the much-needed help you need. And remember to gamble responsibly when you use BetUS.com. BetUS, where the game begins.
Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
Around the world of sports, jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup, then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
So I started thinking to myself about this here up onto the break. Snake Sports Talk Show. Welcome back, everybody. My initial thought on this with Bronny James is that I felt like I'm not going to condemn this idea that the Lakers basically made the wrong pick. Ultimately, I mean, it's going to pan out however it's going to pan out. Honestly, I mean, you could think of it however you want to with the Bronny James situation and with LeBron. But I do feel like that Bronny James is definitely going to be tested throughout his entirety of his career. And the only way to really combat with what many scouts and also what many organizations and players basically say about this, and even for analysts, sports guys like myself, I mean, the only way to combat this is if Bronny finds his identity and he leads into it. So, Bronny, I know, coming off of probably one of the scariest injuries that we've seen that involved a heart condition. I mean, that's hard. You know, it's not that easy. It's not that simple, you know, because at the end of the day, Bronny is going to play his game, and he should, without the critics, without, you know, all the noise that's happening all around. So my thing with Bronny is if he could honestly combat all of this criticism, and he just plays his game and he develops as much as he can, there's an argument to be said there. So, Bronny, we know in the last game against the Cavaliers, where the Lakers ended up winning, he played 25 minutes, was 5 for 10 out on the field, 1 for 3 in three-pointers, and was basically perfect on free throws. And so he had 13 points. With a plus-minus of +1. So he's making the strides. 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks. The thing that I think people are kind of understanding with Bronny is that, look, you got to get the LeBron thing out of here. Focus on the player. Do I feel like Bronny is ready for that full-time role? No. I think because of what we've seen right now out of his game, there's still more development. Like all these guys in this draft, this was a terrible draft. This was not a big, hefty draft. You're starting to see this with Alex Sarr right now, where he was a number 2 pick and he is not looking good. And the thing about what we've gotten out of college basketball, and let alone the great players we've got overseas, not that simple, not that easy. Now, here's what's different is that years ago, international players were not as highly big. We had Tony Kukoc. We had several other players that came in overseas and were basically role players. They were not superstars. They were not the stars that you could put on the pedestal that they're the great players. Now we have Luka, we've got Giannis, we've got Jokic, we've got Wemby as he starts to get older and develop, and I'd say he probably adds in a little bit of size here and there. You could see Wemby really taken over from this point. And there are multiple other players you could also put in the mix. But I mean, I talked about this with multiple sources. I mean, I talked about this with an analyst who covers very closely with the Atlanta Hawks when it came to the Zachary Rishisher pick. And then you've got this Alex Sarr pick. So Bronny James at this point right now as a 55th pick, there should not be. Now we know there's pressure because it's Bronny's kid. It's LeBron's kid. Okay. I get the nepotism conversation. I don't want to put all of that up on blast, but again, if you're given an opportunity, take it. Take the opportunity. You don't know what you're going to get involved in. Now, I understand it's a wish-wash kind of thing because people that do come in because of nepotism either works one of two ladders. You either come in and you develop, you don't take the opportunity for granted. You're going to do that with the best professionalism possible because ultimately, yes, there's pressure not just on your shoulders, but also on either the parent, the uncle, whomever you're very close to. There's pressure on their shoulders too. So it's not just particularly the person that the expectations up on them. It's not solely on it. It's not solely on that person. It's also on another one too. So you have to perform it at least at the best level. But I'm not going to highly put pressure up onto the kid where this massive anxiety now starts to grow. I'm not going to do that. That's not fair. But I think with Bronny, he's coming off of an injury. He's trying to at least develop as quick as he possibly can, given the circumstance that he's not in college anymore, which I thought he probably could have taken another year in college to really fully develop, come back from that injury, and then see what he's got from there. And maybe he might be a top pick next year. But because it's the Lakers, it's LeBron, it's all this other stuff, it's a different kind of business. It's a different beast you're handling here because you've got a coach now, and JJ Redick, a former player. I don't know what he'll be like as a coach. I do hope for great successes. They still got some pretty damn good players. They also drafted Dalton Knecht, who I think is going to be a very good future offensive player for the Lakers. So Bronny has time to really develop here. But I think LA media, LA press, you know how it is with big money market teams. The presses are very, very highly they're very high on their expectations. New York is like this. Chicago is like this. Dallas is like this. So you got to be careful. But at the same time, tread the waters as best as you possibly can. Don't be tippy-toeing like you're walking on thin ice. We know that the pressure of the media is very high. We also know that the expectations are even higher because there's nepotism involved. But again, it works in two different ways. Either you were handed this job because of that person, or you take the opportunity that is bestowed upon you and you run with it the best way that you can. You fully develop, you fully give yourself the best case scenario possible, and maybe this could change around for the Lakers. I don't know. But there's so much of this noise that's around the Lakers right now, but I feel like after what I've seen with Bronny, he's developing very slowly. All these players that come in, they're potentially G League players. They really are. I'm not seeing a whole lot of the needle being moved vastly because international players are basically taking over this league. So slow down, give this puppy time to cook, and then we'll kind of see what we think of Bronny James, not because of LeBron. Think of the player, not the nepotism. That's all it is. So think about that. I think we can understand that much, much more. And I think everything will make sense by the time Bronny is fully developed in his career, and I'd say could potentially be a force in the NBA. So I'd slow down on the idea real quick, and let's just see this thing cook and see how it pans out. All right, time for some news.
This is the Hot Press.
All right, so in the press today, former running back in the NFL, Kenyon Drake, has announced his retirement from the NFL. Former Dolphins, Cardinals running back after 8 seasons in the league. So he wrote on his Instagram, "It's been an incredible ride. Hard to believe seasons have come and gone. I've loved the journey, the wins, the moments, big and small, the camaraderie, energy, all of it. Ready to enjoy a little retirement and see where the next chapter takes me. Thanks to everyone that was along for the ride with me. Wouldn't change a thing." So Kenyon Drake, the former 3rd rounder in the 2016 NFL draft, selected by Miami out of Alabama, finishes in his college career. He had rushed for over 1,400 yards and 23 touchdowns in his time in Tuscaloosa. He was a really good situational back. I like Kenyon Drake. So, again, it's a bittersweet thing because sometimes with a lot of these role players and what you potentially would see with them, you would hope that there would be more production up in front of them. But I kind of think with Kenyon Drake, the injuries started to really pile up. And I think in the end, he basically played a pretty good career. So happy for him. Happy retirement. Best of wishes. I think I think he was a pretty good role player in my opinion. All right, so some news in the NFL. This is interesting here because I'm curious to see how the secondary really shapes up from here. So the Baltimore Ravens, who lost Geno Stone and lost a couple defensive players, including Patrick Queen, their linebacker. They just announced that they have signed 2-time Pro Bowl safety Eddie Jackson to a 1-year deal. Jackson was released by the Chicago Bears on February 15th to end up freeing up some cap space. The former 4th-round selection in 2017 started in all 100 games he's appeared in over 7 seasons with Chicago, a 2-time Pro Bowl selection, and also earned All-Pro honors in 2018. He's coming back from a foot injury that really shortened his game in the past 3 seasons. So he'll played at least 12 games in 21 and 22. The 30-year-old had totaled 15 interceptions, 44 passes defended, 10 forced fumbles, and 459 tackles in his career, tied 3rd in Bears franchise history with 6 career defensive touchdowns, 5 of which came in the first 2 seasons. So Eddie Jackson comes in with some serious grit, and he's also got some very good experience on, in his belt. So I think this is actually a pretty good underrated move, in my opinion, with the Ravens giving him 1 year because they want to see what kind of player are they getting out of Eddie Jackson. I think, to me, you're going to get somebody who's very physical because 10 forced fumbles in his career, that's pretty damn good. And at the same time, he really does help out developing a defense that lost Geno Stone, lost their linebacker, and you're hoping, and they also lost their defensive coordinator in Mike McDonald. So I'm kind of curious how this will work, but I think with him and with Marlon Humphrey and with Kyle Hamilton up out there, I think the Ravens defense could be in good shape. It may not be in great shape like what they were last year, but I think they're in decent shape where there's some spots that they've filled in. and it's worked for them. So who knows? This could be very interesting. But I like the signing. I think a very underrated signing, and at 30 years old and playing at a high level is pretty damn good in my opinion. So I think Eddie Jackson could definitely pan out. So sources in Major League Baseball, this is kind of crazy. I live here in Denver, and the number 3 overall pick for the Colorado Rockies, Charlie Condon had agreed to a deal that includes with a $9.25 million signing bonus, tying the Major League Baseball record for upfront money to a drafted player. Now, the Georgia product, Condon, he had 21-year-old playing third base. I actually really like the pick. I've watched some of his film, and I've watched what he's done in Georgia. He's hit 37 home runs this season, which is the most the NCAA started mandating. This is the most they've seen since they've mandated BBCOR in 2011. So, the top of the scale power and elite swing. He had batted .433, drove in 78 runs with 57 walks, and he had only struck out 41 times. Condon so far looks to be the number 1 player on this 2024 draft board. Now, they do have Travis Bazzana, and then there's Chase Bird. So I think Condon is coming into a situation where, look, I live here in Denver, and right now a lot of people have a whole lot of high hopes on the Rockies as a whole because of just the ownership situations. But Charlie Condon is pretty damn good. He's got a great bat, and I think also helps to boost the offense that the Rockies right now haven't been able to really kind of produce a whole lot. Now, they're pretty scrappy, but they got to produce some offense. Now, they do have at least a good chunk of players that they're building around with Brenton Doyle, Nolan Jones, Jordan Beck, and Zach Dean. So this was just too enticing for them to pass up. So I think Condon is coming into a much more laxed situation with the Colorado Rockies, but a $9.25 million bonus in Major League Baseball for a rookie. We hadn't seen this in quite a while. The first time since 2011, since they've mandated the BBCOR. So I think Charlie Condon, I'm excited for this kid. And living here, I'm going to be definitely going to more Rocky games, probably when they play the Dodgers, or at least play a couple of other teams, maybe potentially the future Las Vegas A's. But I'd like to see what the long bombs are going to basically look like off of Charlie Condon's bat. I think this kid with 37 bombs last season in Georgia, this kid's the real deal. So, Rockies, you better cross your fingers and you don't screw this up because, this is a young youth movement. We know that they've got some pieces that they could potentially acquire because we're in the trade deadline buzz right now, close to the end of the month. And there are going to be some players that could be on the move. Like Ryan McMahon could be up on the move. There's a couple other players that could be up on the move as well. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I am kind of excited for this game. All right, that's the news.
This is the Hot Press.
I'm going to take a quick break up from here, but when we come back, because there are I've got at least a level of optimism here. Now, I've talked about the quarterback, the 3 teams that could potentially look at quarterback: the Raiders, the Giants, and I'd say, give or take upon the situation, there could be the Titans that could be looking up at quarterback, but I feel like they're kind of steady right now, and they're pretty good with Will Levis. I think you could be very much be looking at, some very good potential strides. But there are 3 teams out there that could potentially look up at quarterback, and even the Dallas Cowboys if this thing doesn't pan out. So I'm going to explain more about that here after the break here on the Snake Sports Talk Show.
Check out the Con Man live on the Sports Corner, coming to a screen near you, giving you the greatest stories from basketball legends you've never seen before. Sharing their glory, building the toughness, and how they show off their swag. But only one man knows all that, and that's the Con Man. Join Michael Conceição, the Con Man, at the Sports Corner, Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases. Robert Lyle hosts Between the Lines podcast, Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Well, if anybody ever gets this feeling sometimes when, like, as I just recently, just before the show, ended up going on a workout. You know, I got to get myself prepared for September when the wifey and I celebrate our honeymoon in an undisclosed place. But we know we got a boat. So I'm really excited about that. Trying to get myself into a little bit of the tail end of beach season, but I've been tanning myself. I've been getting some really good color. but yeah, I'm really excited about the trip. So here's something people never really thought about. So I've been talking with a lot of sports fanatics out there. As you could kind of see, I'm very interactive when it comes to social media, because I want to hear from the fans' thoughts. Because, and that's why this platform is so unique with the Snake Sports Talk Show, because it's based around giving clarity and finding the silver lining to every topic, so that it kind of helps with our audience and it helps out with our fans out there. Now, I'm not looking to win a room. I'm not into that. I've never really been the kind that I got to have the spotlight. Never been that kind. I'm very reserved. I'm reserved to a T, but I am very I'm very interacting. You know, I'm very social with everybody, and I'm fair. I'm fair to a lot of key points. Now, there have been, I'd say, 1%ers that have been out there that they want to win the argument. They want to basically win the spotlight, which I'm not there to do. So I know when it comes to it, now my personal favorite team, of course, with the Chargers, I don't like to show my fandom, but when it comes to a lot of Raider fans, you should expect you're going to get a lot of pushback. because that's just how invested and that's how emotional that Raider fans are. They're very invested in their team. Anytime you talk about about the Raiders at all, it doesn't even matter the conversation or the topic, they're going to defend. Like, isn't that why they have a shield right there up in front of them? They're going to defend. So here's my thoughts on this with not just the Raiders, but two other teams as well that could potentially look at quarterback if things do not pan out at all. So what did we get last year from the Raiders at quarterback with Jimmy Garoppolo? So Jimmy G, we know, is clearly injury prone. And at the same time, there was a part of his game that Davante Adams voiced out, and he was not thrilled. He didn't like how Jimmy Garoppolo, what his skill set and how he basically approached the offensive playbook. And it really did not help out with the Raiders moving forward as far as being that sneaky good team. Now, they were coming off of a year where it was kind of more of a circus show because you had Josh McDaniels as your head coach, and things were not working or panning right at all because they're not systematic. The Raiders have never been a systematic organization at all, probably since I've been watching football. I've never seen them be like this. Now, they have been in such a bad turn of irrelevancy probably since 2002 was the last time. That was the peak end. I think that was where you started to see the relevance, because right after that Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and John Gruden and how that ended up panning out, the Raiders were not the same team. They've been gutted, and at the same time, draft picks were so far mediocre, and then at the same time, coach after coach, GM after GM, the Raiders had a lot of problems. Recently, though, there was a point where I kind of looked at the Raiders and I felt like it could be interesting as long as things pan out right. Now, when John Gruden was there and they signed this 10-year contract, which I felt like it wasn't going to last very long. They fire him and in comes Rick Bisaccia, interim coach. I liked Rick Bisaccia. I felt like he was a very good locker room type coach, much like, your David Culley's of the world. Some of those coaches. You don't know if they've got a whole lot of success, but it tells you a lot about leadership when you could win a locker room as a coach. I would have given David Culley another year, but we know that they're trying to build relevancy here in the room. So the Raiders, after that, they felt like, well, we could go with Dave Ziegler and we could basically go with Josh McDaniels and see how this works because they've built successes in New England. Well, ask any Raider fan. How did that pan out? It did not pan out well for them at all. They were calling for both of their heads, and Josh McDaniels, he did not end up learning a lot of his mistakes that what he did in Denver, which is why clearly he was basically in Tom Brady's back pocket. Didn't have to babysit, didn't have to do nothing, because all he needed was just a guy that basically ran a playbook, read you the stuff on the playbook, and Tom did the rest. That's honestly what I go down with in history with Josh McDaniels. That's why I think you basically should give him half, if not a third, of that paycheck to Tom. Once he got fired, that's when in comes Antonio Pierce, a player coach, much like DeMeco Ryans, who really sets the tone of the Raiders. And then since that point, the defense gave up 17 points from opponents. Their opposing offenses were not that efficient. By the way, they shocked the Kansas City Chiefs in that holiday stretch. So they shocked the Chiefs. But again, that's all part of when you think about the coaching staff and how strong and yet how invested that they are in their players. And if players are willing to buy in, and I think that defensively they are. Offensively, this is where I kind of have a little bit of a reservation from here, because you have Davante Adams, You have at least a couple of other really good players, Jacoby Myers, and then you drafted Brock Bowers. Now, the question remains is Gardner Minshew that quarterback? Or is Aiden O'Connell that quarterback? If you do not have the right quarterback at the helm, the very least that you could do, and I know we've been hearing some buzzes and some sources, and I know Davante Adams doesn't like having his name thrown out there, especially when it comes to the trade pool. But you can make an argument there that even if you were to trade a star and give yourself compensation, like top round draft picks, maybe potentially to go and get your future franchise quarterback, because I thought they were going to plan to do that. That was in the plans when they said Michael Penix. They were waiting for him to drop in their lap, and then that didn't happen. Once the Atlanta Falcons made that pick, it was game changing. They got to change. They got to change the table now. So I think the Raiders could be in a position of one of two things. Either number one, the offense can be efficient without Josh Jacobs, but I feel like that might sting a bit. But I do think Zamir White could be an interesting running back moving into the 2024 season. And then there's, well, is Davante Adams really going to produce with Gardner Minshew or with Aiden O'Connell as quarterback? Could be, but I don't think you're going to have a highly explosive offensive production like what you've had with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. But there's an argument to be made there that I think he could very much be productive. But the point of that is because is that to maybe potentially build up draft? Could that basically build up a possible trade scenario? We don't know yet. So not only the Raiders are they in this conversation, but so are the Giants and so are the Dallas Cowboys. And I think if you want to put in a little bit of a wild card, let's just see how the Tennessee Titans really move this forward with Will Levis. You gave them two really good offensive tackles to beef up the offensive line. Yes, they lost Derrick Henry, but I mean, when you look at Spears, the running back, could be interesting. And then at the same time, they signed Calvin Ridley. They signed L'Jarius Sneed. They end up getting at least a couple of some good players that could be impactful. We're not sure because the AFC South is definitely changing. So the Giants, the Raiders, and the Cowboys could very much be the teams to keep your eye on as far as quarterback play. Because as we're watching Hard Knocks on the Giants right now, Daniel Jones with Saquon Barkley out of the picture, and now you bring in Devin Singletary, this is where you got to make Daniel Jones work because you're paying him $45 million a year. I probably wouldn't have made that deal. That's my honest opinion because I think from what I've seen from Daniel Jones, I get it with the messes of head coaches from Ben McAdoo and with Pat Shurmur to get to this point of now having Brian Daboll. John Mara is basically there with his hands folded, and he's basically hoping that there's going to be positive results this year. I mean, you could see it. You could read the room. I mean, look, I'm not an optometrist here, but I could see body language. I could read the room. John Mara is concerned that by the time Saquon Barkley is, since he's now in Philadelphia, the second they first meet, and if Saquon cooks, what do you think the message is going to be sent in that front office? And how do you think the New York Post is going to really engage this? It's not going to look good. And now I know addressing getting defensive help for Dexter Lawrence and for Kayvon Thibodeau, that's great and all. I'm not opposed to that idea, getting Brian Burns in that trade deal. But Evan Neal, he didn't really produce well on the offensive line. Andrew Thomas definitely made some really good strides. So the offensive line is a little bit of a concern. I would say the rushing department is questionable. I'm not sure what I'm going to get with Devin Singletary, but he was in a good position with Houston. And at the same time, they got a playmaker in Malik Neighbors, who I think could be a very, very good, I think he'd be a future star. Now, again, this all just pans down to Daniel Jones, the quarterback. And then there's the Cowboys. Because with Dak, if you're not paying him $60 million a year, what I've said to people, and I think, and I've also had two Cowboy content guys here on the show that are fantastic. I would love to get Law Nation up on here because I think it's quality content. And it would be great to have a silver lining on the Cowboys. But here's the thing. If you're not paying Dak $60 million a year, and I kind of called this, then the very best you should do is beef up your offensive line to prepare for the next quarterback that comes in, whether that's through the draft or maybe up in free agency, whomever it may be. But you got to prepare for the next. So my opinion, my gut feeling is you need to sign CeeDee Lamb. He's deserved his pay because he's basically next to Justin Jefferson, almost the most identical receiver that we've got. Offensively productive, very capable of running clever routes. And now we've seen, I believe we've seen CD with Cooper Rush, right? I think we have seen CeeDee Lamb with Cooper Rush at that point. But the thing is that at least with what we're getting right now, and I think at the end of the day, there is this silver lining point that if the Cowboys do not pay Dak and they pay CeeDee Lamb and they pay Micah Parsons, they could very much be in the best capable situation now because you're saving more money. Now, again, I know Dak is very smart on the podium. I also know Dak is very capable of being that quarterback that can be productive. But as I've said multiple times on this show, the Dak against sub 500 teams will not be the same Dak against above 500 teams. You've seen that. There's a time where Dak becomes a shell of himself. Maybe that's Mike McCarthy. Maybe that's because, his offensive weapons can't quite get the pieces together. Maybe that's the case. Now, they did get a new defensive coordinator, which is why I'm hoping that the Cowboys do produce in the best situation possible. But as everything aligns, I think the Cowboys, you need to get a second receiver. You need to. This is what makes most sense. This is why that they're kind of like they're literally tied right now. The tensions are real because if you had a number 2 option at wide receiver, we would not feel this bad. The tension would not be this high. But because you only have CeeDee Lamb right now as your viable wide receiver option, everything else don't matter. So I just think you got to get a number 2 receiver. But at the same time, what are you going to do with quarterback? There could be a market for quarterbacks for the Cowboys, or they could go and draft one. Who knows? It's an interesting situation regardless. But I think the Raiders, the Cowboys, and the Giants, if this don't work out with the Titans, potentially them, but you can see all this. I think you could also make an argument that the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, if things don't go well, but they do have Tyrod Taylor, but maybe into next year, because Aaron can't possibly play with this injury and all the rest of it at his age. It's hard. Maybe he might prove me wrong. But at the same time, they've built up an offensive line. They need at least a capable quarterback that I know can be available. But at the same spurt, who knows what could happen? Aaron Rodgers might not play the same after an Achilles heel. So there's a lot of question marks involved. But I think for the Raiders and for the Giants and the Cowboys, you can make a very surefire argument. Things don't go their way and you don't pay Dak, you better be prepared for the next quarterback that you have up in line. So I'm just saying, keep your eyes on those 3 organizations with their quarterback situation, because that's pretty unique. And we'll see what happens at the end of the day if this is where we are with them. All right, folks, that's going to do it here on the show. Appreciate all of you guys for joining up on me on a beautiful Friday night. Shout out to all of our fans and all of our viewers and listeners for all of their immense amount of support. Appreciate all of you guys and continue to send all your supports. Share it out. We're trying to get to 1K on all social platforms. And thanks to also Roku for showcasing our show. Really appreciate them. Appreciate all of you guys. Show sponsored by BetUS and by SeatGeek as well. Jake the Snake Silva signing off. Have a great rest of your week and the weekend, and we shall see you guys on the next edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, you guys. Look out for one another, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care, everyone.